Second. That is until today. Kyle Larson comes off turn 4, and Larson will win at Homestead, Miami.
If you love me, please don't judge me. Got my hands tied, the power's above me. Don't shoot the messenger, I'm just a puppet here. If you wanna place blame, then look to the puppeteer. Family, fortune, envy, jealousy, privilege, passed on, legacy, secret, sabotage, borderline, felony, suicide, subtract, selfish, pedigree, yeah.
Damn, I did not think this was ever going to happen because of how much bad luck Larson's had at Homestead, but it finally happened. Larson finally won Homestead, finally, after so many years, something that's been long overdue for a while. From his days at Chip Ganassi to now. It has finally happened. Larson finally won Homestead. Before we talk about what happened in the Cup race at Homestead and a couple other races today, because we also had an elimination race this week with trucks. So, all the races of least importance go first, and then the truck race will go last in this recap. But anyway, let's talk about what happened this weekend. But before we do that, we all know that Bubba Wallace got in some trouble this week with the whole Kyle Larson thing. And it's time for Bubba Wallace to spin the NASCAR Wheel of Discipline. Let's see. Oh, one race suspension for Bubba Wallace. Too bad, Bubba. Maybe next time you'll learn not to right hook Larson on the straightaway. And here's your lesson, Bubba. Next time, wreck Larson in the turn. Then you would have got nothing for it. No, this ain't being racist at all. This is just how the wheel works. And oddly enough in this, they didn't give Bubba a fine or any points penalty. Well, I mean, for the points penalty, to be fair, missing a race is a points penalty because you get no points for the race you're suspended for. I mean, I feel like one race was the right call. I mean, if someone got hurt in that whole thing, then I would have been on board with suspending him the rest of the season. But since nobody got hurt, I feel like that's not enough to throw the book at Bubba for that whole thing. One race is a good enough lesson for Bubba. Maybe next time Bubba will learn to keep his emotions in check. I'm honestly surprised Bubba didn't get fined for shoving the official. That's kind of suspicious. And let's be real, the only people that are saying that Bubba shouldn't have been suspended are people that are afraid of being called a racist. Because, in this fucking community, if you now hold Bubba Wallace accountable for anything, and hold him accountable for his fuck-ups, you're now deemed a racist. Even if it has nothing to do with the color of the skin. And let me be clear, I'm not a fucking racist for holding Bubba accountable for his fuck-ups. You know how many times I defended Bubba on this fucking channel? This was the one time where I couldn't. Because that was fucking unacceptable what Bubba did last week. I've gone to bat for the Bubba so many times, so honestly, fuck off with that race shit. And the race baiters can go fuck themselves with a rusty-ass knife. Race has nothing to do with holding somebody fucking accountable. And everyone also saying how NASCAR's inconsistent because, they didn't suspend this guy for last year. Because they didn't suspend Gragson for it at home for wrecking Karam and 13 cars at Road America. Or how Byron didn't get suspended for dumping Hamlin under caution. Well, NASCAR now has set the new precedent here. Like, honestly, NASCAR put themselves in a fucking hole with some of their inconsistencies. Here's hoping that NASCAR actually fucking stays consistent with this new president that they've now set with this Bubba Wallace deal. Will they be consistent with it? Probably not. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with this. But, yeah. At least for once, NASCAR actually made the right call with Bubba Wallace. And to add insult to injury, his replacement, John Hunter Nemechek for Homestead, 2311 took Bubba's entire name off the car and put Nemechek's name on it. The ultimate insult to injury. Maybe that ought to be enough for Bubba to learn his lesson. We shall see at Martinsville and in 2023 and beyond. So anyway, on to the Xfinity race now. So this Xfinity race, it was really dominated by Gragson. In the long run, at least. In the short runs, it was looking like it was going to be a back-and-forth race. Like, Gibbs had a good car early, along with Trevor Bayne. But Noah Gragson had the better car in the long run. Like, once the long run started, Gragson's car just took right off. And Gragson just had the car to beat this entire race. And even despite a couple late race cautions and a late race shootout, it still wouldn't be enough to stop Noah Gragson. Even on a short run, Gragson was able to figure it out late in the race on a short run. And Noah Gragson was able to keep everybody at bay. And Noah Gragson finally wins Homestead Miami. After the last 3 Homestead races falling short, really 3 races Boa should have won, but was screwed off a late caution, the 2020 off both races while dominating. And then last year, having the race in the bag until he was taken out by a lab car. This time, Noah Gragson would not be denied. And Gragson finally wins at Homestead Miami. And gets his 8th win of the season. And with this win, Noah Gragson has officially punched his ticket into the Championship 4. So Noah Gragson, in 2 weeks, will have a chance at the Xfinity Championship. So the best driver all season will have a chance to win the title in 2 weeks. The way it should be. The best driver all year should have a chance at the championship. But yeah, Noah Gragson finally did it. He finally won Homestead. Hell yeah. And Noah Gragson, of course, was fired up after that win. Like, I'm proud of Noah Gragson finally getting that win. Finally gets redemption after last year, after getting that screwed out and win last year by a lab car. Finally gets redemption this year. And finally gets that win at Homestead that has eluded him. But yeah, I think it's safe to say Noah Gragson has Homestead figured out pretty well. Interesting to see if he could do it in Cup 2. We'll have to see. But yeah, great win from Noah Gragson. So Noah Gragson, no pressure from him at Martinsville next week, as Martinsville doesn't matter to him now next week. So that means entering the cutoff race at Martinsville next week, we have 2 spots still up for grabs. With Allmendinger and Allgaier currently holding those last 2 spots. Of course, Allgaier also had a good car too, but he had some bad luck late in the race that took him out of contention. But still salvaged some points out of it. But yeah, next week at Martinsville, the Xfinity Championship 4 will be set and 4 drivers get sent to Elimination Station. But yeah, that was Xfinity at Homestead. Gragson finally gets the win. So now we go to the Cup race at Martinsville. At Homestead. Yeah, Martinsville's next week. Fuck. I almost made the Chase Elliott mistake there. But yeah, Homestead, well, the early laps of this race, it was William Byron that took the lead early. But then Kyle Larson came up in the long run, because the longer the run went, the faster Larson was. Larson had the car to beat on the long run. And it did not take long for Larson to get past William Byron, as he would pass Byron on lap 27. And after that point, Larson would then just go smooth sailing the entire race. Like in stage 1, Larson had that thing on rails. Like he was so fast, he was over 10 seconds ahead of the field by the end of stage 1. It was that fucking nuts. So yeah, and then Larson continued to pull away in stage 2. Like, just seemed like nobody had an answer for Larson throughout this race. Of course, stage 2 ended under caution with Chase Briscoe wrecking and hitting the wall. Honestly, more examples as to why Chase Briscoe should not be in the round of 8. And of course, that contact would end Chase Briscoe's race as he would break the toe link. And then in a weird sequence on pit road, when it looked like Chase Briscoe was going to back into the garage and go behind the wall, the pit crew said, no, come back. And then he drove all the way back to his pit stall. And I was looking at it like, what the fuck is Briscoe doing? Are you out of the race or not? Fucking make up your mind, god damn it. And honestly, I believe doing that whole thing, it actually wastes his time on that 10-minute damaged vehicle clock, crash clock. Like, all you did there was just waste like a fucking minute for no reason, if you weren't going behind the wall. But eventually, Briscoe would end up out of the race. And this means that Martinsville, Briscoe will enter in a must-win scenario. So yeah, after Martinsville next week, we no longer have to fucking pretend this mediocre hack has a chance to make the back into the championship this year. Honestly, get his ass out of the fucking chase. Briscoe honestly had no business being in a round of 8 anyway. But so then stage 3 it would still remain Kyle Larson domination until during the middle of green flag pit stops, where Ryan Blaney would then spin out on pit lane just as Truex and Chastain were just finishing up their stops. And then NASCAR threw the caution for Blaney spinning off on the access road off pit lane. Honestly, that was a needless fucking caution. Because Blaney wasn't even on the track. He was well off the track. There was no reason to throw that caution. Like, he was well out of the way. It was well out of the way of harm of everybody. And they threw this and interfered with green flag pit stops. Hey, NASCAR, what did you say you weren't going to do that when you delayed that caution for that tire in the infield at Kansas last year? What the fuck is this? Where's the consistency? So yeah, that kind of did put Larson a bit behind the 8 ball. And Larson would end up falling back a bit. And then Truex would get the lead on the restart. But we all saw in the long run, Kyle Larson's car just took right off. And then Larson was able to start reeling Truex in until at 22 to go, we would get a turning point in the race. When Tyler Reddick would get loose off turn 2 and he would spin all the way into the inside wall. And that was a hard hit for Reddick into the wall. And that sucks for Reddick because Reddick had a good car in this race. He just had made some bad. He just ended up in a hole and just couldn't dig out of it. Like, I thought Reddick was going to have a car to contend for the win with this week at Homestead. It just never materialized. And Kamikaze, what the fuck is this? Really? Really? You're wishing injury and harm on somebody because of a grudge from 10 years ago? You're wishing for Reddick to get injured? I rock with Kamikaze on a couple things, but that ain't it. Like, honestly, wishing injury and harm on somebody, that is a scumbag move. Honestly, Kamikazegames has just gone downhill for the last year or two. Like, Kamikaze is just showing how much of a piece of shit of a human being he is with that move. That's a fucking scumbag move, wishing injury and harm on somebody. And if anyone's wondering where did his hate for Reddick start? Well, his hate for Reddick started from a K&N race at Rockingham in 2012. An incident between Brett Moffitt and Tyler Reddick. That wasn't even Reddick's fault when Moffitt tried to block Reddick, but Reddick was right there. And Moffitt ended up turning himself into the wall. And that incident also cost Moffitt the K&N championship that year, and it went to Kyle Larson. So yeah, Kamikaze's hated Reddick since that incident. And there was also the Vegas incident, the crash between Reddick and Austin Terrio that ended with Austin Terrio fracturing his back. And effectively ended any career trajectory he had, even though he won an ARCA title 2 years later. But that just added fuel to the fire. But yeah, Kate Kamikaze's grudge came from a crash that happened over a decade ago that wasn't even Reddick's fault. It was Moffat's fault. Like, there's a reason why Reddick is in the Cup Series and Moffat can't even keep a shipmobile ride in Xfinity. But yeah. But then again, is it this really surprising since Kamikazegames still supports Corbin Forster? Even after Corbin got exposed for being a pedophile? Is it really surprising after all that? And then Kamikaze trying to justify it, saying that we were overreacting because he didn't wish him to die. It's like, dude, wishing injury and harm on him is about as bad. Like, dude, you literally wished him to get injured. What the fuck do you think people were gonna say when they saw that? You absolute dumbass. Like, Kamikazegames needs some serious mental help. He needs to go see a psychiatrist. He needs to go see a therapist, a mental health doctor. He needs to go see somebody. He needs to talk to somebody. And needs to get his mental health back in check because that's mental. Because wishing injury and harm on Reddick. I'm not even a Reddick fan, but even I know that is massively fucked up. Yeah, on today's episode of That's Fucked Up, that's fucked up. But anyway, back to the race. And it seems like and we would get to the final round of pit stops. And during this pit stop sequence, we would have one of the big controversies of this race. Where Martin Truex Jr., he would have the sun glaring right at his windshield. And it was looking like he was going to mix his pit stall. Until he decided to brake check Larson at the last second. And Larson had none of it. And just straight up ran Truex over and spun Truex straight into his pit stall. And then Larson would end up winning the race off pit road. Listen, you can cry about it all you want. All the Larsonators can cry about it all you want. Truex was going to be at the back of the field regardless, because if Larson had turned him, Truex would have missed the pit stall and would have had to come all the way back around. And honestly, what was the fuck was Larson supposed to do in that incident? Because Larson had no time to react since Truex slammed on his brakes at the last second. Like, if Larson slammed on his brakes, he's getting fucking turned by Chastain right behind him. Like, what was Larson supposed to do in that situation? Like, it's Truex's own goddamn fault. He should have been able to see his pit stall better. And should have been well out of the way when going to his pit stall. Like, he was way up the track. Like, you're not going to have much success when you intentionally brake check the entire field behind you. And Larson just had none of it. And then on the final restart, Ross Chastain and AJ Allmendinger would try their best to challenge Larson, but in the end, Larson was just too fast for the both of them. And Kyle Larson goes on and finally wins at Homestead Miami Speedway. I did not think this win would happen for the longest time, but it finally did. Larson has finally won at Homestead. Thank God. He finally won Homestead, finally. After so many years of trying and frustration, he has finally done it. And of course, this win will put Larson in the Final Four. Or it would have. Had he made it that far. If only. Fucking stupid chase grid, its inconsistency. But hey, this win puts Kyle Larson's team in the Final Four for the Owners' Championship, the other championship nobody talks about. So yeah, with Larson in the Final Four for the Owners' title, if there was a fucking year where the 2022 Cup Series champion doesn't win the finale at Phoenix, it would have to be this year since Larson's in the Final Four for the Owners' title. Because there's a good chance he could win Phoenix and the 5 team could take the Owners' title. Like, now we have a legit chance to where we could see 2 championships handed out at Phoenix. We could have 2 champions at Phoenix this year in the Cup Series. Just to show how fucked up with the amount of parity we've had this season. You know, from the 19 different winners and now this. So yeah, with Larson winning, it means that nobody locks himself in the Final Four in the Drivers' Championship. Which means entering the cutoff race at Martinsville next week, we had 3 spots still up for grabs. And it's very close on that cut line with Elliott, Byron, and Hamlin. And Blaney, too. Like, it's going to be a very close battle at Martinsville. If this car can actually do something on the short track, since this car has really sucked ass on all the short tracks this year. But yeah, Kyle Larson finally gets that Homestead win. And hey, Elliott fans, good news! Kyle Larson didn't have to win this race at Chase Elliott's expense this time. So I guess that whole myth about, oh, Kyle Larson needs to wreck Chase Elliott to win now, guess that myth ended up being a fucking lie. Like, honestly, some people just need to shut the fuck up and think before they fucking speak. But then again, I'll expect that from a more knowledgeable fan base and not a bunch of fucking retarded boomers. But hey, you know, you can't fix stupid at the end of the day. But yeah, Larson finally gets the win. Some possible momentum after, you know, last week and then getting screwed out of Chase 2 weeks ago. Man, if only he made it past the round of 12. Honestly, he should be in the round of 8 instead of Chase Briscoe. Like, you mean to tell me Larson's season's not good enough for a championship, but Briscoe's is? Fuck off. Just fuck right off. But yeah, we'll go over the Cup and Xfinity Chase grade points at the end of the video. But yeah, Larson finally gets the win. Hell yeah, and it's win 291 for HMS. Which means HMS is now 9 wins away from 300 wins. The countdown is on. Will they get the 300 in 2023 or 2024? Time will tell there. But yeah, to everybody else that raced this weekend, thank you all for playing. But now we get to the race that truly matters this week. The truck race to decide the Final Four. So we have the truck race at Homestead, Miami, the cutoff race to decide who will be in the Final Four competing for the Truck Series title this year. So 3 spots are now up for grabs for this truck race, so let's talk about this race. So throughout this race, Chandler Smith and Shane Smith, they were able to get enough stage points to where in the race, both of them had to end up finishing, like, I believe Shane Smith had to finish 19th or better, and Chandler had to finish 17th or better to make it in. And both Shane and Chandler both finished in the top 10, as Shane Smith would finish second to eventual race winner Ty Majeski, as Majeski had a dominant truck and won the race. So Ty Majeski got his second win of the season. So yeah, within 3 races, Majeski went from having 0 wins to 3 wins. To 2 wins. So yeah, Majeski, he has some momentum entering Phoenix, winning 2 of the last 3. I'd say watch out for Majeski. He could pull off the championship because he'll be the hottest driver entering the Final Four. And you want to have momentum entering Phoenix. But yeah, Ty Majeski, he's definitely a dark horse for this championship this year. But yeah, Shane Smith finished second, so that officially puts him in the Final Four. So the best driver all season in trucks will have a chance to compete for the Truck Series title this year, as it should be. And then Chandler Smith, he finished 10th, so he did what he needed to do with his points. So that puts Chandler Smith in the Final Four, which means in the closing laps, we would have 1 spot still up for grabs. But also with Ty Majeski winning, this also means that Grant Enfinger, who was in a must-win scenario when he really didn't have a fast truck throughout this race, means that Grant Enfinger has officially been eliminated. I was kind of surprised he got that win at IRP. Honestly, he just didn't have the speed all year. Only reason he made it to this far in the chase was because he won IRP. Without that win, he'd probably be out in the first round. But, I honestly thought he was going to be a lot better this year. But hey, at least he did better than all his GMS teammates combined. But just, just a very disappointing season. Like, I thought he was going to be a title contender, but just GMS this year as a whole has been down a bunch. They just haven't had speed all year. But I imagine, and finger with how talented he is, I imagine he'll be back here next year. He'll be back here next year. And here's hoping he'll actually have more speed next year. Maybe if he gets enough speed, he can win 2 or 3 races a year. We'll have to see. And also, early in the race, John Hunter Nemechek would smack the wall, and now it put him 3 laps down, and he could never dig out of the hole. So with that, it means that John Hunter Nemechek has officially been eliminated. Well, 2 times that Nemechek has had a chance at the championship, and he ends up slipping out his fingertips out of hitting the wall. This time, he doesn't even get a chance to compete for the title. Just a very disappointing season on Nemechek. Like, he just did not have the same speed he had last year. In the end, I can't blame the chase grid on this one. The chase grid was not at fault for Nemechek's elimination. Nemechek choked. He flat out choked. Listen, as much as I hate this fucking chase grid, it did not cost him. You cannot use the fucking chase grid as an excuse every time. Sometimes you gotta look in the mirror and admit that John Hunter Nemechek was not good enough to make it to the Final 4. And listen, under any points format, even a single season-long points format, if you can't show up and perform when it matters the most, then you don't deserve the opportunity to compete for a championship. Nemechek had a solid Bristol, but the last 2 races, at Talladega and Homestead, he ran like dog shit. And honestly, based off those last 2 races alone, Nemechek did not deserve to make the Final 4. He did not deserve to compete for the title. He didn't perform when it mattered the most. So that is why he is eliminated. So in the closing laps, this means that we would have 3 spots still up for grabs. With Ben Rhodes, Stuart Friesen, and Christian Eckes battling for those spots. Now Eckes did have a solid finish, but he did not get enough stage points and did not have enough luck go his way with Rhodes and Friesen. So as a result, this means that Christian Eckes has officially been eliminated. I mean, Eckes has had a very solid season. It would have taken probably a win to make it to the Final 4. Just, Eckes, he had a pretty solid, consistent season, but I feel like he probably could have won a race or 2 this year. He just missed some opportunities this year. Just this year, it wasn't meant to be. But Eckes has a lot of speed and potential with ThorSport. He's shown a lot of promise this year. Like, he was easily a top 5, top 6 driver this year. Anyway, though, I expect Eckes to be back here. He'll be back here next year. He'll be back in this position because Eckes is just that talented. But yeah, just, another learning experience for Eckes. I think next year he could be a run contender for the title. Just baby steps. Just take any momentum off this season and translate it to next year to come back stronger. So with that, this means that we would have a battle for the 4th and final spot between Rhodes and Friesen, as Stuart Friesen would end up finishing 4th in the finale. So then it depends on if he could be enough spots ahead of Ben Rhodes. And when it looked like Friesen was actually going to move on, we would then have some manipulation in the chase, as ThorSport decided to manipulate the Final 4 for the chase and the outcome of this championship. Because in the late laps in the race, when Matt Crafton was running down Ben Rhodes and looked like he was going to pass Rhodes for position, Crafton would then get team orders on the radio, even though it wasn't said on the radio, even though it wasn't said on a broadcast. It was pretty clear as day that Matt Crafton was told to not pass Ben Rhodes for the championship lead. To pass Ben Rhodes so Rhodes can make the Final 4. And then to add on more of this, Christian Eckes, who was already eliminated at that point, once Rhodes and Crafton got close to Eckes Eckes would then slam on the brakes and would let Rhodes right by. And then he would let Crafton right by, I guess, to make it look less obvious manipulation. So because of Rhodes and Eckes letting Ben Rhodes stay ahead of him, that is a 2-point swing. And that would be enough of a swing for Ben Rhodes to get the 4th and final spot by 1 single point over Stewart Friesen. So for Ben Rhodes, the Rating Truck Series champion will have a chance to defend his title next year. And this means that Stewart Friesen, because of ThorSport team orders and manipulation, Friesen has now been eliminated. Let's not beat around the bush. Stewart Friesen got fucked over. He got fucked over there. Friesen got screwed because of team manipulation. Hell, even Ben Rhodes accused ThorSport for manipulation after the race on the radio. And even doubled down on it during this post-race interview. So now the question is, after this race, will Eckes and Crafton both get penalized for manipulating the race at Homestead? And putting Friesen at an unfair disadvantage. Because this manipulation, Rhodes benefit from it. Because let's say Crafton passed Ben Rhodes and Eckes stayed ahead of him. If Eckes stayed ahead and Crafton actually passed Rhodes would have been out by 1 point. Because of ThorSport's manipulation, Rhodes makes it in by a point. A 2-point swing. So yeah, honestly though, for NASCAR needs to penalize Crafton and Eckes. I mean, if you penalize Cole Custer for manipulating Charlotte to help Briscoe, then Crafton and Eckes should be no exception. Like, you set the new precedent with Custer. Now it's time for NASCAR to be fucking consistent for once in their goddamn fucking lives and actually stay consistent with this precedent. And penalize Crafton and Rhodes and Eckes. They both need to be docked 50 points each and need to be fined $100,000. And their crew chiefs need to be fined and suspended indefinitely for manipulation. Because if you did it to Custer, you gotta continue to do it. Actually stay consistent with it. But I'm expecting NASCAR to do nothing and to be inconsistent as fucking always. Expect the shit show coming Tuesday or Wednesday when they announce the penalty, reporting Crafton and Eckes' names aren't on it. But yeah, Stewart Friesen, he should be in the Final Four, but he got fucked over. I can't even bash Stewart Friesen in this situation. He 100% got screwed. He got screwed over. This race will end up being the Homestead screw job. Friesen got screwed. Like, I feel for Friesen. Had a bounce back season. But once again, just gets screwed out of Final Four. And it was something out of his control for manipulation. I mean, that's the difference when you're a single car truck team and you're going up against somebody that has 2 or 3 fucking teammates. Like, you're fucked from the get-go. But yeah, the Final Four is set. It's going to be Ty Majeski, Shane Smith, Chandler Smith, and Ben Rhodes. One of these 4 will be your champion in 2 weeks in the Truck Series at Phoenix. But honestly, anybody other than Shane Smith winning the title this year would be criminal. Shane Smith is the best driver all year. Shane Smith is the most deserving driver of the 4. Can Shane Smith win the title at Phoenix in 2 weeks? You'll have to tune in to find out. But anyway, let's take a look at the Cup and Xfinity Chase Grid standings. So here's the Xfinity Chase Grid standings entering the cutoff race at Martinsville next week. So 2 spots still up for grabs. So Ty Gibbs, he's entering the Martinsville 30 points above the cut line. I feel like Ty Gibbs is safe. I think he will get enough stage points and he will put himself in a solid position to make it into the Final Four. But that 4th and final spot is when it gets tight. Because Allmendinger enters 5 points ahead of Justin Allgaier for that final spot. Austin Hill enters 7 points down, and then you got Sam Mayer and Brandon Jones. Honestly, I feel like both of them are in must-win situations entering Martinsville. I mean, Mayer, he could make up the 28 points, but he would need a lot, and I mean a lot, of help to make that happen. Brandon Jones, there's no way he makes up 38 points. So, Brandon Jones, he has to win Martinsville. I mean, Brandon Jones, he did win Martinsville in the spring. Can he do it again? But if we learn anything in these cutoff races, it's that no points gap is safe. But yeah, I feel like Ty Gibbs is safe. I feel like he'll make it in, but that fourth spot's going to be very tight between Allmendinger, Allgaier, and Hill. But if Mayer or Brandon Jones somehow ends up winning this race, then it gets interesting for that final spot on that cut line. So now here's the Cup Series chase grid entering the cutoff race in Martinsville next week. So we have 3 spots still up for grabs. Ross Chastain's 19 points above the cut line, and Chase Elliott is 11 points to the cut line. Both of them are so extremely close to that cut line, but both of them, to make the Final Four, they both just either have to win Martinsville or just get enough stage points, stay out of trouble, and just point their way in. That 4th spot, though, is when it gets very tight, as William Byron holds that final spot by 5 points over Denny Hamlin for that 4th and final spot in the Final Four. Now, Ryan Blaney, he's 18 points out. Blaney could still point his way in, but Blaney would need a lot of help. Like, he would have to get a lot of stage points and would need a lot of help. He would need some issues for Hamlin or Byron to happen, or someone above him in the cut line to have issues to have a chance of making the Final Four. And then Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe, there's no way they make up those points gaps at Martinsville. Like, both of them have to win the race. They're both in must-wins. But hey, Christopher Bell, he was in a must-win scenario entering the Roval a couple weeks ago. He was able to win the last time he was in a must-win. Can he do it again? We'll have to see. And yeah, hopefully after next week, we no longer have to pretend that Briscoe has a chance to make the Final Four. Honestly, get Briscoe's mediocre ass out of here, but keep in mind, if someone below that cut line wins, then it gets very tight for that final spot. A lot can change. And like I said, we've seen here before, no points gap entering Martinsville is safe. But yeah, that's the cut line entering the chase grid entering Martinsville next week. Now for the Death Note, I'm not going to put Stuart Friesen in it, because Friesen got fucked over by Thor Sport manipulations. But for the other 3, for Eckes, Nemechek, and Edvinger, they're going in it, because those 3 can take out their Metro cars and hop aboard the L train. But the rides home will be short-lived, because they've arrived at Elimination Station, and for that, they go somewhere different. Because their failures of having a solid season, their failures to get around to winning the round of 8, their failures to be consistent in the round of 8, their failures to get enough points to make it to the Final Four, and their hopes and dreams of winning a Truck Series championship this year. Consider their names written down in the Death Note, as their seasons and their hopes and dreams have been absolutely deleted.
There's only one thing left to do. Gotta write their names in the Death Note. Delete!
Delete. 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 Delete.
You will rest in peace.